I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby here with Expat star Ji-young Yu. First of all, Ji-young, take us back to the day that you landed a role on a Lulu Wang series starring alongside Nicole Kidman and Sarah U. Blue. No big deal. How are you feeling?
Yeah. Um, I had started auditioning in February of 2021. And by the time I got the call that I had the job, it was May. And I had had multiple callbacks in between, but there was usually 2 to 3 weeks of in between of not hearing anything. So in those 2 weeks, I would go through multiple stages of grief of, of me going, oh God, like I made a horrible mistake in a Zoom, and I honestly don't remember if I did or not. I think I might have invented mistakes or gone like, oh, I just don't have the job. I think I was 21. I was like, oh, I'm too young to get this job to play a woman who's in her mid 20s. I just got off playing a 16-year-old. I'm being too ambitious. And that would just cycle, and then I would get a call back and be like, oh, great. And we'd start the process over.
Uh,
And then on May, I remember the day, it was May 5th, and I got a call from a Boston, Massachusetts number, and I was confused because I have family in the East Coast. So I was wondering if one of my aunts or uncles or my grandparents got a new phone number. So I picked it up thinking it was my family, and it was Lulu. And she told me I had the job, and I was super articulate. And I think I said something along the lines of, oh, gosh, really? And slowly sank and sat on my bed like a little teenager. And I was so excited and elated and dumbstruck. And then for the next couple weeks, I was having a really hard time eating food because I think as soon as I got off the call, it hit me how big of an opportunity it was and how life-changing it was likely going to be. Because you never know with these projects, but when Nicole's on it, and I think I was one of the first people cast after Nicole, um, it, it's one of those things that is gonna be a huge experience just to even do a scene with her,
yeah,
and then get to see her work in person. That's such a once in a lifetime opportunity. So
yeah.
I spent the next couple weeks kind of panicking, and then I finally got the scripts and could really dig into the work.
Yeah. I mean, Nicole Kidman is obviously just another person. She's doing her thing. I mean, she was just honored by the AFI not long ago. It has become a living legend, and she's so highly acclaimed and respected and revered. Did, when you eventually got to know her on set, what did you most value about collaborating with her?
Oh, so many things. The list really can go on. I think the reason why she's such a legend and has such an incredible body of work is also because she's really kind and really sweet. And uh I never really felt like I was talking to someone who was above anything else. She's so grounded and so interested in the human experience. The real hurdle is getting over just meeting her. And it's not because of anything she does, it's just because I respect everything that she's done so far and to be able to watch her work. And I think the thing that maybe I appreciate the most is how passionate I think she is towards her craft. And there were so many moments on set where we were working out a problem together, or I could see the gears turning in her head to figure out exactly what she wanted from the scene. Um, and that's such a amazing thing to watch a master actor do. And it's why she got that AFI Lifetime Achievement Award. She is a legend.
And it is such a great opportunity for someone so young like yourself to start off. You've obviously already been working, but it's such a great opportunity. So I want to talk about the work now, because I thought it was exceptional. I loved this show. It really surprised me. I love how it opens with a slideshow about who causes the accidents, the perpetrators. What do you think about that choice that Lulu Wang made to initially frame Mercy as, I guess, a perpetrator,
Mhm.
especially because we soon learn that she has been impacted by others' actions as just as much. So it's more like a vicious circle as opposed to a linear thing from perpetrator to victim.
Oh yeah, that's such a great way to put it. I think it's maybe a bit overused at this point, but hurt people hurt people. And I think that's what you mean by that cyclical trauma cycle. But what I think is really incredible about the show is, and the framing of that is, it's setting up this huge question of at what point do you forgive yourself? And at what point, and I think for Mercy especially, she's not even thinking about being forgiven. She's not even sure if she's allowed to ask for forgiveness. And to ask that, especially from Margaret, who is going through one of the hardest things a person could ever go through. So as an actor, it was so exciting to be faced with such a huge philosophical question. It presents such a really amazing obstacle for a character of how do you overcome that? What do you do with your life after you have made a mistake that's irreversible? And while I don't think hopefully too many people have had the level of experience that Mercy or David have had, of being a perpetrator to that extent, I think we all have done things in our lives that are things we'd like to take back, but we can't. And that's a very human, relatable, real place to start.
It really is. And then we get to episode 2. Mercy's on a cruise. She spontaneously jumps overboard,
Yeah.
swims under the vessel.
Yeah.
And this is after retelling the story about how her face is a receptacle for misfortune and she'll fail at life. And I'm just like taking this all in. So heavy and deep. That swim made me so anxious. Talk
Yeah.
me through filming those scenes and what you think they meant as part of the bigger picture of understanding who Mercy is.
That scene was huge for understanding Mercy as a character. I was so heartbroken reading that. It's in the book and it's also obviously in the show, but to know that she's going to such an extent to try and be seen by other people, and then after doing something that is really life-threatening, she comes out of the water and turns around and no one's there. And I think that was so representative of how Mercy feels about the world, of her trying to reach out to people and not knowing how to reach out, because I think she doesn't know how to be honest with the people around her. So then she looks around and she's surrounded by people and is in one of the most crowded cities on the planet and still feels alone. And that's such a great, talk about great writing and great storytelling, because it immediately shows you who she is and her internal reality of how she feels. And I did not guess that when I signed up to do this project, I'd be doing stunt work of that level. But it was really fun. I love doing stunts. So I was so excited to do it. And I spent, I think it was about 10 hours in the water getting that sequence done. And I'm so proud of how it came out.
It's so good. And I'm I'm looking at you playing Mercy in the water after she has swum under a boat, a cruise liner, whatever you want to call it. The look on your face when she comes out of the water and sees that no one really cares completely shattered me. There's a lot of heavy lifting you're doing in terms of your internal dialogue and Mercy's feelings, whilst also trying to survive in water. So, like, I mean, that's a lot. It's a lot to put on you. And I just wonder if did you have to do it over and over again, or was that something that you were able to get done? 12 hours is a long time.
Though the sequences above water were fairly simple. I started swimming for that sequence about, we shot that in the US, and if you're a fan of a Wipeout that was on ABC, we
Yeah,
shot in the Wipeout tank. Uh,
that's right.
and when we were shooting that, we weren't quite sure when it would hit, and I really didn't want to be uncomfortable in the water, so I started doing laps as pretty much as soon as I got back to the US, which I think ended up adding up to about a couple months of regular swimming. So by the time we were doing the underwater stuff, I felt pretty comfortable in the water. But I think what's really cool about that sequence is I'm actually sitting on a ladder in the water. I've got like my feet sort of perched there, so I'm not worried about swaying too far from the camera.
Yeah, floating.
Yeah. But I mean, those sequences were great because we were honestly so efficient and so fast because they're so specific and so hard to get. And we just were making sure that we were getting every little piece that we needed, which is, I think, why it ended up adding up to so long. But I love that scene because audiences are smart and they notice everything. And that scene pretty much lays out everything that you need to know for why she latches on so hard to Margaret and to the Wu family.
Yeah, absolutely. We learn more about her relationship with her mother, which I think is likely very familiar to a lot of people. Her mother is overbearing and often quite demeaning. How important do you think that was, not only for us to understand who Mercy, why she's bottling up so much pain and anguish, but for you as well to really fully form this authentic person?
Yeah, it's huge. I think the backstory of a character is always really important for me. It's and the actor term is like the moment before, and that really matters a lot to me going into a scene. I think I can always feel for me when I'm walking into a scene and have so much to draw from. Uh, and I do also want to say on the record, I have a great relationship with my mom. My my
Same.
parents were kind of
Yeah.
like, you take a role, because I've played a couple roles now that haven't had the best relationships with their parents. My parents were like, could you take a role maybe where we don't seem like we traumatized you and you're putting that into your art?
No.
Um, so I love you, mom and dad. But that was hugely important. I think it most of our trauma, I think, as most of people know now, comes from people early on in our lives in formative relationships, and that so often is parents or siblings or family. I'm so sorry. Do you hear the siren?
No.
Okay, if you don't hear it, perfect. But learning to draw from what initially wounds you, and that initial wound of feeling like her mother doesn't believe she'll ever be good or she can never really amount to anything, and that it's literally written in the stars that she's cursed and she's bad luck, affects every decision she makes from there. Because why would she make a better choice when she doesn't believe there will ever be a good outcome to anything she touches? So when the fateful, horrible events in episode 2 happen, it's just a nail in the coffin for her. She really just is finally can confirm that she is cursed, and anyone she touches will be cursed by association.
Yeah, it's her programming and her actions in this series just really solidify what she already thought about herself. And then, of course, towards the end, Mercy breaks down as her mum embraces her. And that was a real cry. That was really cathartic for the audience. What about for you?
It was a real cry. It was great. It was what's kind of amazing about the way we've framed the show is there were several emotional scenes that Mercy had that got cut from earlier episodes in the show, and I think that's what makes that final scene in episode 6 feel so earned, because you've watched this girl bottle up every single feeling of sadness and grief and guilt because she feels like she doesn't have a right to feel any of those things or to show any of those things to other people. And sometimes you just need a hug from your mother, uh, to feel like you have the right to begin to heal and to feel okay. And that came surprisingly easy for me. I was really nervous about it because I hadn't done many roles where I was asked to cry. Uh,
Yeah,
and I had no idea, frankly, if I was capable of that. And so when I saw that in the script, I went, wow, uh, I would love to watch this. I don't know if I
yeah.
can do this, but luckily it worked and it happened, and uh, we did, I think, maybe 6 takes of that. And
Yes.
I think I took a break midway through because I was having trouble keeping it going.
Yeah.
It's a lot of crying. And I think
Oh,
once I got some air and took a bit of a breath, I'm pretty sure the one that we ended up using was the final take,
wow.
which,
Did
which
you?
I think got that exhaustion, that feeling of
Yeah.
just so tired and needs help so much.
It's so like she is so spent. She's so done. And it's so apparent. And after watching it, I mean I'm in the story, but then when I'm thinking about this interview, I just thought, geez, I would have had to go and lie down after that. That's a lot. It's a lot to do. And yeah, so I'm also curious. I didn't know really or appreciate what expat communities were like. And so I was really interested in how there's this social hierarchy, maybe based on ethnicity, but also on socioeconomic status. And um, I'm just curious, as Mercy was an expat, she was all alone, far from home. Was that aloneness, as you kind of alluded to earlier, really important to how you were going to inform how you wanted to play her?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Um, what's cool about Mercy, and I think about the framing of expats and talking about expatriates in their lives, is that um, it's very easy to see where the intersectional parts of people's identities would start to have friction, and that's what Lulu really wanted to explore. And Mercy of Margaret, Hillary, and Mercy is the only one who has the experience of also being an immigrant because she was born in Korea before coming to New York. So she exists in this very strange in between of knowing what it's like to not necessarily have that much privilege and growing up much more poorer than the other women, to going to Hong Kong and having the privilege and the ability to go there and to be able to leave, like Charlie says, whenever she wants, and to be able to take her American passport and her Ivy League education. And I think her feeling of falling between the cracks, you see it right before she jumps off the boat in episode 2, of how she wants to fit in with these wealthy people and she clearly doesn't. And she's so desperate to find a home because she didn't find it in America that she's hoping by becoming an expat she'll find it in Hong Kong. But I think what becomes very clear to her is that she can't find it outside of her. She has to find it inside herself first.
Yeah. My final question's about what the show does at the end. And quite honestly, Jiyoung, I was surprised that this show actually, I kind of felt like I learned something about loss and grief and about having to move forward. And I didn't think that would happen, but it did. And I can't wait to tell that to Lulu in a couple of weeks when I speak to her. The end of the show kind of has the three women looking right at the camera and they're talking to each other. Mercy wants to atone for what's happened to Margaret's child, and she's terrified for her own child that she's now pregnant. She's so defeatist. It's a great full circle moment about compassion, forgiveness, and moving forward. What did you take away from that, even personally, when you were you were part of it?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's such a great question. Um, I know what scene you're talking about. That was one of the final scenes I auditioned with. Um,
Really?
yeah, an early version of the direct-to-camera addresses was one of my final auditions. I think what I just learned is that you just have to give people a little more compassion. You really don't know. I think if you were to meet Mercy at the period that expats happens, you might not know what she was dealing with in her life, certainly because she wasn't about to share it with anybody. And I hope that people walk away from the show treating themselves with a little more love and forgiveness and the people around them with a little more love and forgiveness. It's it's a really big lesson to learn that forgiveness starts with learning to care for yourself, I think.
Yeah. Empathy is so important, but you can't really put yourself in others' shoes if you're not really feeling it yourself. And I just really feel like these days it takes a lot for a TV series to be that deep. And this one certainly did that for me. And on that note, Ji Young, thank you so much for your time today and congrats on some really beautiful work in Expats.
Thank you so much.